verse. So I was looking through Dhammadeepa today, and I found a very interesting verse that I actually think is very appropriate and actually fits in well with a lot of the topics we've already talked about today, and also a lot of the sort of difficulties we're having in the world. There's lots of change going on in many different places. We don't even need to think of all the various countries where serious events have happened, right? And often we think, oh, all these tragedies are happening near and far. People are worried about this or that. So how do we deal with these things in light of the Dharma? And so Dhammadeepa number 42, which is the verse we're going to talk about, says, Diso disam yam tam karya, veriwa panna verinam. Michapanitam chitta papionam tatto kare. So whatever enemies, haters might do to an enemy, or a bandit might do to a bandit, these things are nothing compared to what a badly directed mind might do. So no matter who tries to harm you, no matter who tries to steal from you, these are minuscule compared to a negative mind. And so the story related to this verse is there was a man named Nanda, and he was a herder. So he was a very wealthy man. He had a large number of cows. And he was among the group of lay people who were very interested in learning from the Buddha. He was a friend with Anathapindika, so kind of the Buddha's main lay follower, the man who donated the large monastery. Many of the Buddha's sermons in the Pali Canon take place around this monastery. But Nanda, so he was always kind of on the periphery. He came to many teachings, he was very interested, and as was the custom of that time, he would always invite the Buddha to come and receive offerings from him. He would invite the Buddha and the Sangha for the meal. And interestingly, the Buddha always sort of said, so not right now, but maybe. And so for some time, the Nanda, the herdsman, was sort of not, he was still followed the Buddha, he was still very interested, but he never quite got his wish of inviting the Buddha. And the Buddha knew that the time wasn't quite right for Nanda. And so he still came, he still invited the Buddha every time he saw him, he still came to the teachings. And then one day, so the Buddha's custom was always to, before alms round, sort of, think who he could help, who was best ready to understand. Teaching today, this was part of the Buddha's great compassion and sort of great skillful means, as he always knew who to teach on that particular day, who he would encounter. And so he realized that now, on this particular day, was the good time to go visit Nanda, the herdsman. And so as the monks went off on alms round, the Buddha went to the area where Nanda usually was and just sort of sat down and waited, and Nanda came. And Nanda found him and invited him and said, Venerable Sir, I would really like to offer you and the Mahasangha some offerings. Please come to my place. And the Buddha accepted the invitation, and with the monks, they went to Nanda's place, and for 7 days, Nanda provided all the requisites for the Buddha and the Sangha. And the Buddha, of course, gave lots of Dharma teachings, and during this time, Nanda received the fruit of Sotipan, stream entry, right? So his mind was opened, he saw through, letting go, and many of these things we're talking about, craving and grasping, and doubt and self-view. So he has received this, unlocked this level of enlightenment, but the time was there for the Buddha to go back, and so the Buddha and some of the monks went off to where their next stop was. Nanda asked to carry the Buddha's bowl. He said, "Venerable Sir, let me follow you for a while and carry your bowl for you." And so they went off. And after a while, they reached a certain point where they had gone far enough. Nanda had to return back to his business. So he saluted the Buddha. He again thanked him for the teachings. And those monks with the Buddha and the Buddha departed, and Nanda went back home. So on his way back home, Nanda was shot with an arrow, and he died. And the commentary says that it's unclear. It might be some dispute that Nanda had in this life. It might be some dispute that Nanda had in a previous birth. The bhikkhus didn't ask, so we don't know. But from some negative karma in his past, whether current life or previous lives, the fruit was Nanda died from this violence. And some other bhikkhus who I guess were with the Buddha at Nanda's place, but maybe they were cleaning up, maybe they had some other business to attend to, they were walking along the road, going to join the Buddha, and they saw the body of Nanda, the herdsman. And they were very sad and very upset. And so they went to see the Buddha, and they reported to him what they saw. And the bhikkhu said, "Oh, it's so unfortunate, it's such a shame that he invited us." The bhikkhus were really upset. If Nanda hadn't invited the Buddha, if we hadn't stayed with him, maybe he would still be alive. And the Buddha said, "Don't think like this. There's nowhere where Nanda could have gone where he could have escaped his karma. There's no direction, whether like north or south or east or west or any of the intermediate directions. There was nowhere for Nanda to go where his karma couldn't find him." And that's when he gave this verse, right? So these negativities can only harm other negativities. Why was Nanda harmed? Because of some previous harm he had caused. But why was Nanda fortunate? Because even despite this negative effect always chasing him, we sometimes say that like your negative karma, your previous deeds are always following you, like the sun is always following the horizon, will never stop. But still, he was able to learn the teachings, he was able to provide offerings to the Buddha and the community, and through that practice, through that offering, through that sort of listening to the Dharma, he was able to achieve a great accomplishment, the fruit of stream entry. And so when the bhikkhus finally understood this, they were overjoyed. Some of them themselves achieved stream entry from this story. And so how does this story relate to what's going on? I think oftentimes we fall into the trap of thinking that all we have to do to get good things is to be good. Now, it's true, if you want good things, you need to be good, cause and effect. Good actions lead to good results. Likewise, negative actions lead to negative results. But we don't have control over all of our previous actions. We did at one point, but those actions are already out in the universe, already done. Maybe we had a change of our opinions about ourselves or about our actions at some point in life. Maybe we used to believe one thing and then we saw how karma worked. And so we changed our behavior, but still there's all these things that we did before we understood, right? Oh, but maybe we were always born with this sense. How were we born with this sense? Well, we must have done some good karma in the past to be born with this insight, be born with this good conduct. But we can't know how long that good karma was created. I mean, do we know what our previous birth was like? Hopefully good. We're humans, right? We're doing good behavior, we're engaging in good conduct, so the odds are there was some good stuff there, but I don't know, 10 lives to go, 1,000, 1,000,000, 1,000,000,000,000, the karma is all floating out there. So we can't 100% say that there's no negative effect waiting out there for us. You know, even the richest person in the world, you know, all kinds of negative things happen to him. Even the person in the most sort of miserable, destitute state can still see like a beautiful sunrise and see, you know, something good. So there is no absolute good, there's no absolute bad, but what we can do is train our minds, right? This is the way to defeat the true enemy, our negative grasping thoughts. And this is the way where no matter who comes after us, no matter who's shooting us with an arrow or giving us an award, we can remain the same and say, let go, be here and now. Thank you. Oh, sorry.
Question.
Yes.
I just want, do you kind of link it, as you're talking about actions and stuff, like, you kind of link it to Newton's third law in physics, equal and opposite